November 3rd, 1955. The Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, a packed showroom, and a moment that would become one of the most legendary confrontations in entertainment history. Dean Martin stood on that stage, microphone in hand, 3 songs into his set. The crowd was captivated. Every joke landed, every note was perfect. He had them in the palm of his hand. Then the doors swung open. Anthony Castellano walked in. But nobody called him Anthony. They called him Big Tony, and that name carried weight. He was a capo in the New York crime family. He had connections to every major casino in Vegas. When Big Tony entered a room, people noticed. When Big Tony spoke, people listened. And when Big Tony wanted something, he took it. That night, he was loud. He was drunk. And he wanted everyone to know he had arrived. Dean was in the middle of a ballad when Big Tony's voice cut through the music. "Hey, Dean, sing something with some life in it. My grandmother could do better, and she's been dead for 10 years. The audience laughed nervously. Dean smiled, never missing a beat. "Well, sir, if your grandmother sings as well as you behave, I'd love to hear her sometime." More laughter. Tension released. Dean had handled it perfectly. He continued his set, but Big Tony wasn't done. And here's what Big Tony didn't know. Here's what would change everything that night. Someone else had walked into that showroom just minutes before him. Someone who was sitting in the shadows, 3 tables from the stage. Someone who had one unbreakable rule. You never disrespect a man's mother. Ever. What happened next would shock everyone in that room, and it all started with a single insult. If you're already hooked, drop a like right now and comment where you're watching from tonight. 20 minutes later, Dean was telling a story. Not a joke. A real story about growing up in Steubenville, Ohio, about his mother, Angela, about how she came to America from Italy with nothing but hope and courage, about how she taught him to be polite, to respect others, to carry himself with dignity no matter what. The audience was leaning in, smiling, nodding. This was the Dean Martin they loved, not just the singer, the man. That's when Big Tony stood up. His voice boomed across the showroom, cutting through the moment like a knife. "Dean, your mother taught you manners. Shame she didn't teach you how Vegas really works." The room went dead silent. Every person there understood what had just happened. This wasn't heckling anymore. This was something else. In Italian culture, in any culture, you don't insult a man's mother. That's a line you don't cross. But for Dean Martin, it was even deeper. His mother, Angela, had died when he was young. His memories of her were sacred, untouchable. This wasn't just an insult. This was war. The band stopped playing. The spotlight operator froze, unsure where to point. Waiters stopped mid-step. The entire room held its breath. Everyone knew Dean had 2 choices. He could ignore it and look weak in front of 500 people, or he could respond and start a war with one of the most dangerous men in Las Vegas. But there was something Big Tony didn't see. 3 tables away, hidden in the shadows, a figure was already rising from his chair. His jaw was tight. His eyes were locked on Big Tony like a predator spotting prey. Frank Sinatra. Frank had arrived quietly that night, unannounced, just to watch his friend perform. And Frank Sinatra had one rule that everyone in his world knew. One rule that had been carved in stone since his childhood in Hoboken. You never, ever disrespect a man's mother. Frank's bodyguards tensed. The men at his table held their breath. Everyone who knew Frank knew exactly what was about to happen. But before Frank could take a single step, Dean Martin raised his hand. A small gesture, almost invisible, and what he did next would become legend. Frank paused. He'd known Dean for years, through the good times and the bad, through the fame and the struggles. He trusted Dean more than almost anyone. So when Dean's hand went up, Frank understood. Wait. He sat back down, but his eyes never left Big Tony, not for a second. Dean stood at that microphone, perfectly still. He wasn't smiling anymore, but he wasn't angry either. His face was calm, contemplative, like a man who had already decided exactly what he was going to do. He took a slow breath, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet. But somehow, it reached every single corner of that room. "Sir, I want to thank you for bringing up my mother." Big Tony smirked. His crew laughed. They thought they'd won, but Dean wasn't finished. "Because she's actually the perfect example of what I'm trying to explain tonight." The smirking stopped. "My mother came to this country from Italy when she was 17 years old. Dean continued. "She didn't speak English. She had no money. She had nothing except her character and her values. And you know what she taught me?" Dean's voice was still soft, still controlled. But there was something underneath it now, something that made people lean forward. She taught me that the way you treat people when you have power over them tells you everything about who you really are." The room was completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, nothing. Frank Sinatra leaned forward in his chair. A small smile crossed his face. He knew exactly what Dean was doing, and he realized something in that moment. Dean wasn't going to fight Big Tony. He was going to destroy him, not with fists, not with threats, not with the kind of violence Big Tony understood. Dean was going to use something far more powerful, something Big Tony had no defense against: the truth. And as Dean continued speaking, as his words began to cut deeper than any weapon ever could, Big Tony's smirk started to fade. He could feel it coming. The entire room could feel it coming. But nobody could have predicted just how devastating the next few minutes would be. What Dean Martin said next didn't just defend his mother's honor. It exposed exactly who Big Tony really was, in front of everyone, and Big Tony would never recover. If this story is giving you chills, hit subscribe right now, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Dean's voice remained calm, almost gentle, but every word landed like a hammer. "My mother cleaned houses for rich people," he said. "She scrubbed their floors, washed their clothes, cooked their meals, and some of those people treated her with respect. They said please and thank you. They saw her as a human being who was working hard to feed her family." Dean paused. The silence was suffocating. "But some of them treated her like she was invisible, like she was nothing, like being poor and working with your hands meant you didn't deserve basic human dignity." Big Tony's smirk was completely gone now. He could sense where this was going, but he couldn't move, couldn't speak. He was frozen. "And you know what my mother told me?" Dean asked. "She said, 'Dino, the people who are cruel when they have power are the weakest people in the world. They need power to feel strong. They need to make others feel small so they can feel big.'" Dean's eyes locked directly onto Big Tony. "She said, 'Real strength is being kind when you could be cruel. Real power is lifting people up, not tearing them down.'" The audience was transfixed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something deeper, something that would be remembered for decades. "So, when you make a joke about my mother," Dean said, his voice still measured, still controlled, "you're actually proving exactly what she taught me. You're showing everyone in this room that you need to insult a dead woman to feel powerful. You need to mock someone's mother to get attention." Dean took one step forward on that stage. "And sir, that doesn't make you look strong. That makes you look desperate." Big Tony's face went red. His crew had stopped laughing. People at the surrounding tables were staring at him now. Not with fear, with pity, with disgust. Frank Sinatra was nodding slowly, watching from the shadows. He'd seen Dean handle hecklers before, but this was something else. This was a masterclass. Dean wasn't just defending his mother. He was dismantling Big Tony's entire identity with nothing but words and truth. "You said my mother should have taught me how Vegas really works," Dean continued. "Let me tell you how Vegas really works. Vegas runs on money, sure. Vegas runs on power, absolutely. But you know what makes Vegas actually function? It's the dealers and the waitresses and the janitors and the performers. It's the people who show up every day and do their jobs with dignity, even when people like you treat them like they're nothing." Dean's voice dropped even lower. "Power without character is just bullying. Money without decency is just greed, and making jokes about someone's mother doesn't make you clever or powerful. It makes you small." The silence was absolute. "So here's what I'm going to do," Dean said. "I'm going to continue with my show. I'm going to honor my mother's memory by treating everyone in this room, including you, with the respect and dignity she taught me, even when they don't deserve it. Because that's what real strength looks like. That's what real class looks like." He turned to the band. "Let's pick it up with something cheerful. How about That's Amore?" The music started. Dean sang, and Big Tony sat there, visibly shaken, as 500 people watched him in silence. He had come to assert dominance. Instead, he had been completely exposed, and the night wasn't over yet. After the show, Dean was in his dressing room when someone knocked on the door. One of Big Tony's men stood in the doorway. "Mr. Martin, Big Tony wants to speak with you. He's waiting outside." Dean's manager went pale. "Dean, don't go. Let me call security. Let me call someone." Dean just smiled. "It's okay, I'll talk to him." He walked outside to the parking lot. Big Tony was leaning against a black Cadillac, smoking a cigarette. His crew was there, but they kept their distance. The desert air was cool. The neon lights from the strip glowed in the distance. Big Tony looked at Dean for a long moment. Then he spoke. "You made me look like a fool in there." Dean didn't flinch. "You made yourself look like a fool." I just pointed it out. Big Tony took a drag on his cigarette. You know I could make things very difficult for you in this town. I could end your career in Vegas tonight. I know, Dean said calmly. You have that power. So why did you do it? Big Tony's voice cracked slightly. Why risk everything to defend your dead mother's honor? Dean thought about it for a moment. Because some things are more important than a career. More important than money or success or staying safe. My mother gave everything so I could have opportunities she never had. The least I can do is defend her memory when someone disrespects it. Big Tony was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Softer. Almost broken. My mother died when I was 12. She was a good woman. Better than I turned out to be. He looked at Dean. What you said in there? About how people treat others when they have power. My mother used to say something similar. I forgot about that. I forgot a lot of things she taught me. It's not too late to remember, Dean said quietly. Big Tony laughed bitterly. Yeah, it is. I'm too far gone. Done too many things. He flicked his cigarette away. But you're the real deal, Dean. That took more guts than pulling a gun. That took real strength. He extended his hand. We're good. You won't have trouble from me or my people. You got my word. As they shook hands, footsteps approached from behind. Frank Sinatra stepped out of the shadows. Big Tony stiffened. Frank looked at Dean, then at Big Tony. You're lucky Dean got to you before I did, Frank said. My way would have been less educational. Then he turned to Dean and smiled. Your mother raised a hell of a man, Dino. They walked back inside together, leaving Big Tony alone in the parking lot. If this story is hitting different, smash that like button and comment below, where are you watching from right now? The story of that night spread through Las Vegas like wildfire. Not the version where Dean got into a fight. Not the version where violence erupted. The real version. The version where Dean Martin stood on a stage and calmly, eloquently defended his mother's memory by showing everyone what real strength actually looked like. Other entertainers heard the story. Sammy Davis Jr. heard it. Peter Lawford heard it. Performers who had been bullied by powerful men for years heard it, and they were inspired. If Dean Martin could stand up to a mobster without losing his cool, without sacrificing his values, without becoming what he was fighting against, maybe they could stand up to the bullies in their own lives too. It became a defining moment, not just for Dean's career, but for how performers saw themselves in relation to the power structure that controlled Vegas. 10 years later, in 1965, Dean was doing an interview for a magazine. The interviewer asked him about that night. Dean had never spoken about it publicly, but enough people knew the story that it had become legend. What made you respond that way? The interviewer asked. Most people would have either ignored it or gotten angry, but you did neither. Dean thought about it. When someone insults your mother, your first instinct is rage. You want to hurt them back. But then I remembered what my mother actually taught me. She said, when someone tries to hurt you, ask yourself why. What pain are they in that makes them want to cause pain? He paused. Big Tony wasn't really insulting my mother. He was trying to assert dominance. The insult was just his tool, so I addressed the tool instead of reacting to it. Did you change his mind? Dean smiled softly. Maybe I reminded him of something his own mother taught him. That's all we can really do. Remind people of the better versions of themselves. When Dean Martin died in 1995, his daughter Diana found a small box among his possessions. Inside was a photograph of his mother, Angela, and a piece of paper with her handwriting. It was a note she had written to him when he was just a boy. Translated from Italian, it read, Dino, always remember, being strong doesn't mean being hard. Being powerful doesn't mean being cruel. The strongest people are those who are kind when they could be mean, gentle when they could be harsh. That is true strength. That is what I want you to be. Dean had carried this note for his entire life. It had guided how he responded to Big Tony that night. It had shaped how he treated people throughout his career. Big Tony Castellano died in 1972. According to those who knew him, he had mellowed in his final years. He was never a good man. He had done too many terrible things for that. But he had become less cruel, less needlessly vicious. When asked why, he would say, I heard something once about how treating people badly when you have power is just weakness pretending to be strength. Took me too long to understand it. He never mentioned Dean Martin by name, but those who knew understood. One night in 1955, a singer held up a mirror to a dangerous man, and somehow, against all odds, that man actually looked into it. That's not just courage. That's hope. That's the power of speaking truth with calm strength instead of angry violence, and that's something worth remembering. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel for more, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight?